lunges. First step, find your way to a lunge. Come onto all fours. Now I'm going to step my left foot forward, and then I've placed an extra blanket down here so that my right knee has something comfortable to rest on. Okay. Introduce yourself. Let the hips draw back a little bit, and then allow your tailbone to draw under as you come forward. Do that a few times. Let it draw back a little bit. Let the tailbone come under. The nervous system loves to know that it has an exit route. And by moving it back and forth a couple times, you communicate that it's not forever. And you also simultaneously let the body know what's coming. Okay, eventually you'll find a spot that feels like your first landing spot. Land and let a happen. Okay, now usually I like to keep my back toes tucked under. Usually that helps me track my knee a little bit better, but today I'm sensing that it feels better on the top of the foot. So that's kind of new. Now I find it most effective to stay in this position, to kind of let my hips roll a little bit to the right and to the left, to kind of find those outer and inner lines. Some bodies find it more effective to have their hands on the inside of their foot. For me, that takes it out of the thigh and puts it more in the hamstring, so that's not as interesting to me as keeping my foot in the middle. And some people find they like to come up and bring their hands up onto their knee, you know, letting that be casual. This is too intense for me. When I come up here, it's really hard for me to relax. The heat that rises comes right at my heart and my throat and my face. So some days I'll play with it, but generally I find it more useful to hang low. The yin yoga practice was my gateway into a sitting practice. I've been practicing yoga for about 5 years before somebody suggested that I sit still. And when it was first suggested, Sarah Powers, there was a workshop in, I think, 1999 at Kent Bond Studio in Willow Glen, San Jose. She arrived to the workshop, and it had been billed as a strong vinyasa workshop or something of the sort. And she said, well, let's start by sitting together for 20 minutes. I almost died. I couldn't do it. And I hated her for that. Eventually, I did my teacher training with her because of that. Soften the throat. Now, we've been here about 3.5 minutes. We're going to be here for about another 30 seconds. See if you can start to sense, okay, the relationship of the jaw and the psoas. The psoas that connects from that T12, that last thoracic spine, wraps down through the pelvis all the way to the femur. As you let the jaw get heavy, sometimes you can sense that hip dropping. Excellent. Carefully now. Let your hands come under the shoulders and slowly press yourself back. You might find your way to down dog. I'm going to choose child's pose, wiggling back through the hips as the forehead might find its way to the earth. And then we'll make our way to the other side. Let an inhale start to bring you forward. Let your opposite leg come forward for me. Now that's my right foot. Find your left knee, your back knee on the blanket or support. And the support is obviously optional. If your knee and the surface you're working on are have an agreement, everything's fine. So again, introduce yourself. You draw it back and you let it sink in. And you draw it back and you let it sink in. You do that enough times. Again, as you sink in, you might draw the tailbone under a little bit. It's like nobody likes it when somebody drops by without calling. I mean, there are a few people that can drop by without calling, but not many. So it's like calling ahead. Hi, I'm in your neighborhood. Okay, and eventually let it happen and relax your jaw. Again, there's this relationship. So if you've been suffering from TMJ, this kind of stretch, the lunge, is believed to be really useful. Again, I'm just going to keep it in the position I like, but again, you might morph it a little bit. Hands might come to the inside of that foot, or pay attention that not all the weight's coming down in your wrist. So I'm on my fingertips. You know, some people like to turn their hands in different directions, so at least they're stretching their wrists in different directions. Some people find it effective to kind of put more weight onto this front knee. So like the key here is as you find a spot where you can listen. So the yin practice was my gateway into sitting, not only because of the opening that it provides for the places that tend to get cranky in a sitting practice, the hips, the low back, the groin, the knees. Okay, physically, but also my belief, I buy into the theory that the yin practice helps open those channels to help that subtle energy flow. But more importantly, it offered the space of small, little, bite-sized moments of stillness. And if you've made any effort towards sitting practice, you'll know what Chogyam Trungpa was talking about when he said, meditation is one insult after the other. As you start to endeavor to understand the mind, as you step onto the path of Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha, yoga is the mastery of the fluctuations of the mind. As you start to notice your mind, as you start to become self-aware, the self we become aware of isn't always the one we had in mind. Okay, let another last few moments. Notice where you might still be in anticipation of the shape. And then slowly, attentively, walk your hands back. Free that right leg back to meet the back leg. Wiggle your way back in towards child's pose, hips down towards the heels. And when you've been here long enough, chin into the chest, let it roll back up. Feel the belly and the heart and the throat and the face. And we'll meet in the next clip for saddle.